In a quiet suburban neighborhood of Pennsylvania, 62-year-old Judy Harris was enjoying her peaceful retirement days. After a nursing career spanning over 30 years, she now only occasionally volunteers for community health consultations. Her joy in life was her 6-year-old grandson, Tommy. Judy has 2 children. Her older daughter, Sarah, lives far away, but they keep in frequent contact. Her son, Scott, lives nearby and is raising Tommy with his wife, Linda. However, recently, Judy had been feeling a bit uneasy about Scott and Linda's parenting approach. It's important to encourage a child's independence, but those two are taking it a bit too far, Judy had once confided to a friend. Still, she was grateful to be able to watch her grandson grow up close by. The oak leaves swaying in the breeze quietly announced the arrival of autumn. Judy had just returned from a short 3-day trip. The little getaway with her friends who volunteer at the nursing home had been a much-needed refresh for her. Placing her suitcase in the entryway, Judy took a deep breath. "I'll stop by Scott's house and give Tommy his souvenir," she murmured to herself. Her love for her grandson transformed her tired expression into a gentle smile. After a 15-minute drive, Judy arrived in front of Scott's house. However, her excitement quickly turned to anxiety. She could see a small figure lying on the doorstep. The oak leaves swaying in the breeze quietly announced the arrival of autumn. 62-year-old Judy Harris had just returned from a short 3-day trip. Her salt and pepper hair was neatly arranged, and her warm blue eyes told of her years of experience as a nurse. Placing her suitcase in the entryway, Judy took a deep breath. "I'll stop by Scott's house and give Tommy his souvenir," she murmured to herself. Her love for her grandson transformed her tired expression into a gentle smile. After a 15-minute drive, Judy arrived in front of Scott's house. However, her excitement quickly turned to anxiety. She could see a small figure lying on the doorstep. Oh no! Judy quickly got out of the car and rushed to the doorstep. There, she found her 6-year-old grandson, Tommy, unconscious. His small body was cold, and his face was pale. "Tommy, are you all right?" Judy quickly assessed Tommy's condition, drawing on her experience as a nurse. Fortunately, she could detect faint breathing and a pulse. She was about to call 911 when Tommy let out a small groan and opened his eyes. "Grandma." Judy's face showed relief at Tommy's faint call. However, her next worry immediately surfaced. "Tommy, I'm so glad. Where are Mom and Dad? Are they inside the house?" Tears welled up in Tommy's eyes. And his next words made Judy's heart nearly stop. "Mom and Dad are under the tomb." Judy caught her breath. Confusion and fear enveloped her heart. The words "under the tomb" echoed ominously in her ears. "What do you mean, Tommy?" But before Tommy could answer, he lost consciousness again. Judy held her grandson close, her mind racing through various possibilities. An accident? A crime? Or just a misunderstanding? The sound of approaching sirens could be heard in the distance. Judy took a deep breath, trying to regain her composure. As she prepared for what was to come, she whispered quietly. "It's okay, Tommy. Grandma's here. I'll find out what happened, I promise." As the ambulance sirens grew closer, Judy's heart was pounding. However, her years of experience as a nurse helped her stay calm. The paramedics arrived and quickly assessed Tommy's condition. "Fortunately, there's no immediate danger to his life," the paramedic reported, and Judy breathed a sigh of relief. However, they recommended a more thorough examination at the hospital, to which Judy readily agreed. The 3 hours at the hospital felt like an eternity to Judy. As she sat restlessly in the waiting room, the doctor finally appeared. "Mrs. Harris, your grandson shows signs of dehydration and mild food poisoning. However, we've administered appropriate treatment, so he should recover by tonight." While relieved by the doctor's words, questions swirled in Judy's mind. How did Tommy end up in this condition? And where were Scott and Linda? Tommy woke up at dusk. When Judy entered the hospital room, a look of relief spread across his young face. "Grandma." "Tommy, it's all right. Grandma's here." Judy gently held her grandson's hand. "Can you talk a little? Can you tell me about Mom and Dad?" Tommy hesitated for a moment but then began to speak in a small voice. "Mom and Dad went to Egypt. They said they were going to see the pyramids." "Egypt?" Judy couldn't hide her surprise. "When did they go?" Maybe 3 days ago." Tommy looked up at the ceiling, trying to remember. "Dad said they were going under the tomb. But I couldn't go." Judy felt anger at her son and daughter-in-law's irresponsibility, but tried not to let Tommy see it. "I see. So, who was taking care of you while Mom and Dad were away?" Tommy shook his head. "No one. I was alone." Pain shot through Judy's chest. Leaving a 6-year-old child alone to go on an overseas trip. She took a deep breath, trying to maintain her composure. "Tommy, you did well. But didn't your tummy hurt?" Tommy thought for a moment before answering. "Yes, my tummy started hurting yesterday. I ate a sandwich from the fridge." Judy began to piece together the situation. A neglected child, improper meals, and resulting food poisoning. Her anger grew, but right now, caring for Tommy was the priority. "I understand, Tommy. It's okay now. Grandma will take care of you." As she hugged Tommy, Judy made a silent vow. To protect this child and make him happy. And to confront Scott and Linda sternly. That afternoon, Sarah arrived. The 2 women faced each other with serious expressions, discussing how to proceed. They considered various options, including legal measures and contacting Child Protective Services. As night fell, Judy and Sarah were contemplating their next move with firm resolve. They were determined to take all necessary actions, prioritizing Tommy's happiness and safety. The morning after Sarah's arrival, Judy made a heavy decision. At the breakfast table, she faced Sarah with a serious expression. "Sarah, I'm going to contact Child Protective Services. This is a problem we can't handle on our own. Sarah nodded quietly. You're right, Mom. Tommy's safety is the most important thing. Judy took a deep breath and picked up the phone. She called the Child Protective Services CPS hotline and briefly explained the situation. A few hours later, social worker Emily Johnson visited. Emily was a woman in her mid-30s, with kind eyes and a calm demeanor. She sat in the living room facing Judy and Sarah, carefully listening to the details of the situation. Mrs. Harris, please tell me more about what happened, Emily gently prompted. Judy explained the sequence of events, detailing Tommy's condition and his parents' actions. Emily listened intently, occasionally taking notes. This is indeed a serious situation, Emily began, choosing her words carefully. First, I recommend starting legal proceedings to become Tommy's temporary guardian. We should also report this to the police as a possible case of child neglect. Judy and Sarah looked at each other and nodded. Emily continued. I can refer you to a trustworthy lawyer. And I'll support you in reporting to the police. That afternoon, Judy met with the recommended lawyer, Martha Clark. Martha was an experienced female lawyer in her 50s, highly regarded in the field of child welfare. Mrs. Harris, let's start the petition to become your grandson's temporary guardian right away, Martha said firmly. We'll ask the court for an emergency protection order. This will allow you to act as Tommy's legal guardian even if his parents suddenly return. Judy's face showed relief. Thank you, Miss Clark. What should I do? Martha explained in detail the necessary documents and procedures, and Judy signed them on the spot. At the same time, with Emily's help, they reported to the police. They reported the possibility of child neglect, and a formal investigation was initiated. While legal proceedings were underway, Judy and Sarah devoted themselves to caring for Tommy. They took him to see Dr. Anderson, a local pediatrician, for a checkup and received instructions for appropriate treatment and nutritional management. Tommy's physical recovery is progressing well, Dr. Anderson told Judy after the examination. However, psychological care is also important. The sudden absence of his parents must be causing him great anxiety. Judy nodded, recalling Tommy's behavior. Indeed, Tommy had woken up several times in the middle of the night from nightmares, crying out, "Mom, Dad." Please continue to provide a stable environment and love as much as possible, Dr. Anderson gently advised. And if necessary, we should consider counseling with a child psychologist. From that day on, Judy and Sarah took turns caring for Tommy, ensuring that someone was always by his side. Tommy gradually began to smile again, but Judy's heart ached when she saw him staring into the distance at times. Tommy, it's okay. Grandma and Aunt Sarah are here for you. Judy gently hugged her grandson and kissed his forehead. Tommy nodded slightly and clung to Judy. Grandma, when are Mom and Dad coming back? Judy hesitated for a moment but answered gently. I'm sure it will be soon. Until then, Grandma and Aunt Sarah will take good care of you. Tommy softly replied, okay, and buried his face in Judy's chest. As Judy stroked her grandson's soft hair, she made a silent vow. I'll make sure you're happy, Tommy. No matter what. As night fell, a warm atmosphere filled Judy's house. Although legal issues were still unresolved, Judy strongly felt that protecting Tommy's smile at this moment was the most important thing. In the midst of busy days taking care of Tommy, Judy's cell phone rang. Her heart raced when she saw her son Scott's name displayed on the screen. "Hello, Scott." Judy's voice contained a coldness. "Mom, we're back." "Where's Tommy?" "He's not at home." Scott's voice sounded frantic. "Tommy is at my house. Come over right away." "Bring Linda too," Judy answered shortly and hung up. An hour later, Scott and Linda were standing at Judy's front door. Their tan skin and expensive-looking clothes told of their enjoyable trip. "Mom, what's going on?" Scott asked with a confused expression. Judy invited them into the living room and faced them with a stern expression. "Sit down. We need to talk." As Scott and Linda sat down, Judy took a deep breath and began to speak. "Do you know what happened to Tommy while you were on your trip?" Scott shrugged. "He was fine, wasn't he? We left food for him, and he can take care of himself." Anger flashed in Judy's eyes. "He wasn't fine. When I found him, Tommy was unconscious and collapsed." A gasp could be heard from Linda. Scott's face turned pale. But we. Scott stumbled over his words. Judy continued mercilessly. "Food poisoning. How did you think a 6-year-old child left alone could safely manage his meals?" Linda opened her mouth. "We value our child's independence. Tommy is a smart kid, so." "Independence." Judy's voice rose. "Leaving a 6-year-old alone for 10 days is independence. That's neglect, it's abuse." Scott tried to argue, but Judy cut him off. "Listen. I heard you went to take care of someone else's children while leaving your own child behind. What were you thinking?" Scott and Linda looked at each other and started making excuses. It was a work obligation, they couldn't refuse, they thought Tommy would be fine. Judy looked at them with disappointment. "I don't see any sign of remorse from you. That's why I've decided to take legal action." "Legal action?" Scott exclaimed. "Yes. I've contacted Child Protective Services and started the process to become Tommy's temporary guardian." Linda stood up, raising her voice. "How could you do that? We're his parents." Judy calmly replied, "I can't trust Tommy with you anymore after you abandoned your parental responsibilities." At that moment, Tommy's small figure was seen in the corner of the room. He was looking at his parents with a frightened expression. Scott tried to approach his son, but Tommy hid behind Judy. "Dad, Mom. I was scared." Tommy's voice was trembling. At those words, Scott and Linda's expressions changed. For the first time, they seemed to understand the gravity of their actions. Gently hugging Tommy, Judy told Scott and Linda, "Think carefully about what you should do for Tommy from now on. Until the court makes a decision, I'll be taking care of Tommy." Scott and Linda left the house wordlessly, hanging their heads. A few months later, the court granted Judy legal guardianship of Tommy. Scott and Linda were ordered to undergo a strict parenting education program and were only allowed supervised visitation rights. Tommy gradually regained his smile and grew healthily under Judy's loving care. As an epilogue, a scene from Tommy's 11th birthday party 5 years later is described. Scott and Linda are also present, interacting with Tommy with a more mature attitude than before. Judy smiles with relief as she watches her grandson's happy face. Through this experience, the entire family grew and learned the true meaning of love and responsibility.